The Working Group, hosted by beloved left-wing broadcaster Comrade Bomber Bradbury, with the best political panel in New Zealand media, reviewing the week, setting the agenda, avoiding defamation. The Working Group is brought to you by Gravity Credit Management. When the weight of capitalism is becoming the event horizon of an imploding black hole, call 0800 Gravity, and our team will get blood out of a stone. That's 0800 Gravity. This is The Working Group.
Kia ora Aotearoa. I'm your host, the editor of the Daily Blog, Martin Bradbury. Bomber to my comrades, Mr. Bradbury if you're nasty. My preferred pronouns are not in the face and please don't hurt my pets. This is The Working Group, New Zealand's bestest and greatest weekly political podcast that isn't funded by New Zealand On Air. We stream live from the MediaWorks Auckland studio, 7:30pm Mondays, although it's 7:39pm Mondays, on Facebook, YouTube and the Daily Blog. The podcast is available afterwards on Apple Podcast, Rover, Spotify and YouTube. Tonight is our end of year special after a season of only 3 episodes. Our productivity screams funded by New Zealand On Air. Our bank accounts don't. Joining me tonight to wrap the political year, review the parties and predict 2022 is the greatest political panel in New Zealand broadcasting. He's the last libertarian standing because most have died of boredom. Best stuff columnist by like light years, like rim of the galaxy shit, like a god amongst insects. The Ctullah of capitalism, the libertarian liquidator, the one, the only, Damien Grant. Kia ora, comrade.
I'd just like to point out I did not write that promo.
He's the Blogfather, one of the best political public academics in the game. House of Gryffindor. So House of Gryffindor. His New Zealand Politics Daily is a must-read daily. Dr Bryce Edwards. Kia ora, comrade.
Hi, Martin. Yes, I didn't write that one either, guys.
And
I'll welcome it.
And he's the National Party bother boy, the enforcer, the big man of the ring, less the mountain coming to Muhammad and more the mountain coming to another mountain, the very funny, the very wicked, the very generous with his time and fellow political podcaster, the Right Honourable Gerry Brownlee. Kia ora, comrade.
Don't call me comrade. That's not one of my pronouns. Call me us. That mountain reference, just push that into my head straight away.
Tonight, issue 1, rate the political parties for 2021. Issue 2, review the big political trauma of 2021. And issue 3, final predictions for 2022. Plus, in this envelope I have in my hands right now, I have the answer to whether or not the working group comes back for 2022. And I'll open it at the end of the show. It's a holiday cliffhanger, folks, just like Shorty Street, but with far less public funding. Let's start tonight by reviewing the political parties and kick off with Labour. They failed on poverty, housing, homelessness, the housing crisis, meaningful environmental law, that stupid bloody bike bridge, but they saved us from COVID with the lowest death rates and hospitalisations. Dr Bryce Edwards, the first duty of the state is to protect the people. The state did a great job of protecting the people. Where's the gratitude for a poll-tanking Labour in 2021?
Well, they certainly saved everyone's lives in 2020, and I think the consensus is that that was the year that they got that gratitude for in the election with 50%. This year, of course, they have had that first year of that 50%. And how have they used it? Well, they didn't really prepare for Delta. They didn't really manage any of the elements of that, of the preparation in terms of ICU, in terms of the vaccine rollout initially. Every element of it has kind of been somewhat botched. So I think I could only really give them 6 out of 10 for this year.
Ooh, Damien, you once infamously said, and this quote could be anything at this stage, couldn't it? But you once infamously said, I would rather drown from rising seas than live in Jacinda's climate change socialist state. How have you managed in Jacinda's COVID socialist state?
I don't think that's an accurate quote, Mr. Bradbury.
Isn't it? It's kind of. It feels like it is.
As Stephen Colbert would say, it's got an element of truthiness about it, doesn't it? Just not actually factually correct.
How's the socialist state going?
Well, the socialist state, as a socialist state, is going incredibly well, and it continues to expand in all areas of our lives. We saw this week that we are now going to ban smoking for everybody born in and after 2008. So I think the expansion of the state continues enormously. How you rate Labor really depends on where your perspective is. From my libertarian perspective, I would give them a -1. But if you were the average New Zealander, if there was such a thing, I think that they would look at the Labor Party and give them a 7 to a 7.5. I think some of Bryce's criticisms is muted because a lot of those things, the ICU beds and all the rest of it, it turns out that they were not needed, and they may never be needed, particularly as we've got some quite good medicines coming in to deal with COVID now. So I think from my perspective, look, I mean, I give everybody about a 0, but I think if you're looking at it from the average New Zealander, the economy is doing well, COVID seems to be under control, it will be hard to give Labor less than 7.
Matua Gerry, MIQ cock-ups, housing price inflation from pouring billions into more speculation, border heartache, vaccine passport rollout problems, a traffic light system we are all confused by, and a divided country sick of lockdown. Why can't National land a punch on any one of those large stationary targets?
Well, people keep saying that, but you think about it, the last poll we had some movement, and if you extrapolate that over the next 2 years, and that would put us in a very good position. All of the things that you've just raised are quite valid. There's no question about that. You look at that, all the stuff around COVID. I'm sick of talking about COVID. I can't believe that the country is so damn compliant to have sort of willingly, in the numbers that we all have, including me, signed up to the vaccine passport. It's effectively the modern day equivalent of pass papers. And now, bouncers at hotel venues or entertainment venues are going to have more power than ever. And I think those sort of things, I think people will see wear thin pretty darn quickly. But you look at that housing one, that just amuses the hell out of me. They expanded the Bright Line, even though it was suggested by all those who look at these things that it wasn't going to make much difference. If the price rise on an average home in New Zealand means that you could own it for 12 months, sell it, and pay the tax and still make $100,000 on that average price. Now, that's never going to solve a housing crisis, is it? And so, you go through a whole lot of things. I just think when you look at the smoking one just recently, what's coming next? There's a whole lot of things out there you could ban on health grounds. So I don't think they've done particularly well. I think, when you get a big mandate like that, you have got an opportunity to really shift things in a way that is beneficial to a very large number of people. I don't think they've used that. So I'd give them a sort of 3 or 4, but you'd expect that probably from my perspective.
Well, so just so Gerry, on the issue of the smoking ban, the 2008 smoking ban, does National have a position on that, or are you still considering whether that's something?
Chris Luxon said, "Show us the bill, and we'll have a look at it." He said that because he speaks as our position. I'll give you my position in a minute. He's saying that, look, if it could be shown that it would make a huge difference and it would see that, 1 in 4 deaths from cancer eliminated, then perhaps it might be worth looking at it. But he wants to see, and I want to see, and all of us want to see what the legislation looks like. Because on the face of it, it looks pretty darn unworkable to me.
Gerry, just a quick question from the sidelines here. You talked about Labor squandering their 50%. I'm genuinely curious if National, because 51% in a MMP majority in a MMP landscape is almost impossible. What would National have done with a 50% mandate going into, let's say the 2020 election had completely gone the other way, National walks in with a 51% mandate. What would National have passed with a mandate like that?
Well, it's not so much what it would pass, but if you look at the economy, the government in this last quarter borrowed $43 billion. The economy grew by $17 billion. Where's the 26? It's been spent on all sorts of things, not necessarily COVID, but under the cover of COVID, that's going to see our country with massive debt for a very, very long time. And people keep saying, oh, look, it's just paper money. They're just creating it. It's not. It's debt. Debt is always debt. Debt is a problem. So we would have had a much stronger focus on that.
Question.
And then, of course, we would have had around local government. We'd have passed the infrastructure bank legislation, so the local government could afford the sort of reforms infrastructure upgrades that are necessary to protect water sources in the years ahead. The Three Waters proposal is an absolute shocker. It's just a state grab and a national, a domesticisation of current assets owned by local communities.
Isn't it great? Quick question to all of you. Best Minister Damien Grant, Best Minister 2021.
I thought about this long and hard, and I went through the list, but I think the best minister clearly has to be James Shaw, because when I
feel this is going to be mean. I feel this is going to be terribly, terribly mean.
Well, I mean, when I go through the list of them, Minister of Child Poverty has got worse. Minister of Finance, intergenerational debt. Minister Woods for Kiwi Build. Okay, the Kiwi Build failure didn't happen on her watch, but nonetheless. Hipkins, education. He closed schools for about 6 months. I mean, that's not great. Little for health. Presided over an explosion of undiagnosed cancer cases. Minister of Local Government. He completely alienated the local government and had to go around and impose her Three Waters and confiscate a whole bunch of assets. So I think she's backed away from that. The Minister of Police, Williams, outsourcing state power to local iwi. Complete madness. Minister of Small Business, Nash. I mean, we've small businesses are only surviving on the state state handouts, and I'm looking forward to taking care of much more of them myself in the new year.
And why James Shaw is best minister?
Minister of Women, right? Overseeing the destruction of women's safe spaces through some of this other crazy stuff. But Minister for the Environment,
yes.
He hasn't actually done anything.
Right,
he hasn't caused any damage.
It was a long journey. Journey to take a big shit on James Shaw. That was just fantastic.
From that perspective, James Shaw plus the air miles.
Dr Bryce Edwards, Best Minister 2021.
Probably Chris Hipkins. I mean, he had a hard task having to handle all those portfolios, COVID, as well as education, state services, Leader of the House. I mean, he had a workload above anyone else, and he's come out without, things being too much in tatters.
People really like him, don't they? They love Chippy. People love him.
Yeah.
Jerry,
so one of the more likable.
He is easily one of the most likeable ones. Jerry, Best Minister 2021.
Look, I had a list similar to Damien, and I do agree that Chippy's not a bad bloke, but I can't agree with the way he's operating in lots of the areas of his portfolio. So I'm going to go just one out to the side, remembering that all the ministers that Damien mentioned have their own cartel of supporters who think they're absolutely wonderful. So I'm going to go for, and we all know that actually there's more spin than substance. So I'm going to go for a minister who is totally spin and absolutely no substance and seems to have got away with it because she's largely unknown, and that's Marama Davidson.
Oh, harsh but fair. My best minister, Naya, she's so great. She's done such a wonderful job with foreign affairs, creating a whole new Kiwi aesthetic to it and stealing Three Waters, nationalising water. Love it.
But
what a great day. What a great day.
Give us one example of the Kiwiana that's been brought to our foreign affairs policy. One example.
She just makes me smile. She makes me feel warm in my heart, and the cockles in my heart, Jerry. She really does.
Oh, well, that's good. I hope that's the case for all our trading partners all around the world too.
Exactly. I'm sure it will be. Worst minister, Damien, worst minister 2021.
I'm surprised, Jerry, we still have any trading partners. No, I think the worst minister has to be the Minister for Child Poverty. This was the signature policy. She took this portfolio. This is the reason she got into politics. This is her raison d'etre.
Oh, you're going to the mountaintops.
This is it. This is what she stands for.
And what's she done? And what's happened?
This is what she wanted to be her legacy, and it has been a complete custard disaster.
Doesn't look good. Worst minister, Dr. Bryce Edwards.
can I say Chris Hipkins again?
Oh, wow! That's all over the place. Why?
Well, maybe it's not his fault, but, New Zealand has had to deal with this huge disaster, and he was given 3 or 4 big portfolios, and he hasn't really excelled in any. Sure, he's averted disaster.
Yes.
But, he really wasn't up to the task of handling them all. And, he has, I think, been more responsible than any other minister for bringing down Labour's poll ratings because they're not seen as having dealt with those issues appropriately, not adequately, I should say.
So, Dr. Edwards, just circling back on that, because it's interesting that you find in the best and the worst, and I can see how you got there, but is that to some extent a function that outside of the Prime Minister and the Minister of Finance, there does appear to be a real lack of depth in this cabinet, and so Hipkins, who is clearly a competent individual,
has had everything on him,
has been loaded on, and so do you think that's part of the issue, or am I being unfair?
No, I think that's absolutely right, and I think it was the Prime Minister's lack of judgment giving the COVID minister also all those other responsibilities, and it was, the lack of other talent and the lack of trust of some of her other colleagues. And I think there probably is some talent there, but she just isn't willing to spread the load.
Jerry, worst minister, Jerry.
Remember that, I've been around a long time. I know all these people quite well. And it's not easy to, even though they're my political opponents, it's not easy to go out and say these things. But one of my, Christchurch local MPs here, Megan Woods, takes it to me because I just think the housing portfolio is such a mess, such an incredible mess. You've got, runaway prices everywhere. You'd have to couple it actually with the Building and Construction Minister, also from Christchurch, Poto Williams, because you've got a massive problem with supply now as well in that new house market. And now, when there's been a housing shortage for so long, I see today someone's writing saying, are we building too many houses? Do the math. We're not. What that tells you is that the lack of clarity in government policy and encouragement and, the recent sort of crying from the rooftops that actually the state's building more houses than ever built before. They're competing directly with builders who can build them at a much faster rate at a better price and make them available to people. So Megan takes it for me.
But is it fair to blame Megan Woods for the house price inflation? Isn't that ultimately the fault of Adrian Orr?
No, I don't think that's a fair comment. What you'd be suggesting is that the interest rate should have been higher at an earlier point. And I'm not sure that that's a good thing either. And it's still a mystery to me as to why they don't have some kind of capital call, so that instead of a bank saying, right, we're whacking up your interest rate because we've got to pay more interest, blah, 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 on it goes. Why don't they say, well, we want to take the heat out of the economy so you're going to have to start paying your capital back a bit faster?
My worst minister is also Megan. Look, I love her, and I mean, and she's great, and a lot of araha, and yay Megan Woods. But oh Lord, when she came out this year and said, "I've built lots of houses," and we were like, "Yes, finally, we've got some bloody houses." How many houses did we get? And she goes, 12, and we all went, what? What did you? And the excitement with which she look at these 12 houses. We're like, 12 houses? For Christ's sake, we only need 24,000 more. That's wonderful. What a great first baby step. Let's move along to National. After a self-mutilation too many, National settled on Chris Luxon as leader, whose call for a reset has the same urgency as a Facebook whistleblower. I'm genuinely surprised Chris hasn't suggested rebranding National as Meta. The pillar to Key's 3-term romper-stomper electoral success and stratospheric polling was because Key lured away an entire generation of female Helen Clark Labour voters who loved Key's vacant aspiration, empty optimism and cheekiness. Some returned to Labour in 2017, but most stuck with affable Bill English. But then that voting bloc saw Jacinda's incredible crisis management. They felt empowered, and in 2020, over 200,000 former female National voters came home to Labour in an astonishing landslide. That centre, 40-year-old plus female vote, is furiously loyal to Jacinda and see criticism of her in the context of an ocean of cultural misogyny. Dr. Edwards, why would that female electorate vote for a rich, evangelical, CEO, Handmaid's Tale level anti-abortionist?
Yeah, that's a leading question, I guess.
Just a little.
Just a little. But you're absolutely right, and they haven't got that sorted out. It was even worse, though, under their previous leader. They do seem to be making progress, I think, to win some of those votes back. And I think they're going to have a much better chance of that than they would have. I mean, I would have given National 4 out of 10 until the coup or until the change of leadership. I'd give them 5 out of 10 now. And I do think it's going to be a competitive contest between those two parties now. I do think that we're going to see some reflection over summer about, the state of the opposition and whether people are willing to give them a chance. And I think they probably will in the next year, some of those people that left them.
Damien, if Luxon can't win over Jacinda's empowered female vote, what about ACT? If you do a deep dive into the numbers, ACT are exploding in the 18 to 49 urban male demographic, but ACT are doing it in such extraordinary numbers, I'd argue that ACT's 17% isn't a fluke or just National faring badly. Those numbers represent a political polarisation and road to Damascus political conversion. How does Christian Dad appeal to ACT's angry urban males?
I'm not so sure that those 17%, because it is very heavily skewed towards men, and I'm a little bit nervous about how soft some of those numbers are. I like the idea that actually it's an opportunity because, they're polling something like 25, 26% among the men and about 8% among the women. I think that's an opportunity. We got to convince those Wahine to come onto the ACT.
But, it can take 25,000 years. Go for it.
But in answer to your question, some of those 17%,
yes,
probably 3 or 4 of that 17% are simply mainstream centre-right voters who have been disenfranchised or turned off from the shenanigans and malfeasance happening in the National Party. If Luxon just continues to act competently and he continues his conservative centre-left position, some of those people will simply be attracted to him on the issue of competence. But I don't think he's going to get ACT down to single digits. I think that ship has sailed.
Matua Brownlee, if Chris Luxon can't win over Jacinda's empowered female vote or ACT's angry urban male vote, he can pull an immediate bump from the sub 5% wasted Christian vote. But doesn't that suggest a 31% ceiling for National with Luxon?
You've got to remember, or all the listeners have to remember, that everything you're offering here comes from as deeply biased political position as my own.
Of course,
and I think the characterisation of Chris Luxon with your what you call him, Christian Dad and various other sort of things, completely unreasonable. Totally unfair. I don't come on here talking about Jacinda Ardern the way a lot of people do in various sort of public drinking houses around the country. I don't do that. I won't do that. But look, I think give the man a go. He's only been in the job less than a week, or just over a week tomorrow. In fact. So I think what you'll find with him is that the 4 years of unsettled time inside our caucus is pretty much over, and so you'll see a much more coalescing around a policy platform than a people platform, and that's where we'll make some progress.
So
you can't go through that massive list,
yep.
That massive list of failure, so beautifully articulated by Damien earlier, and say, well, actually, that's what you're up against. How hard is it to move people? In the end, those people, the women in that group that you talk about, they've got as much aspiration for their own future and that of their families as anybody else.
And so you feel confident the National can win that vote back over, that centre vote?
A good chunk of it, absolutely, and I don't think that's going to be too long before you start to see that movement.
Well, hold on.
I think I'm very worried that you've already, there's a poll out, I understand, next week, or it might even be tomorrow, I'm not sure. when it comes out, if there is a bit of a bump, you've already predetermined, that's just the Christians flocking back to the evangelical leader. That's an unreasonable characterisation of Chris Luxon, and I think an unreasonable assumption about how vote moves as well.
Let's do a quick round. Our best national MP, Dr Bryce Edwards.
Geez, well, it has to be Chris Luxon, doesn't it? I mean, he's gone from what ranking was he, Gerry? And what is he? He's number one now. He's gone up 25 places or something. That's just
I tell you what, Damien. People shouldn't get fascinated by the rankings. I've always said in politics, a rank is a number. What you need to do anything and to achieve something is influence, and that's a far bigger thing. He's always had influence in our caucus since his arrival.
Damien, best national MP.
I'm going to give it to Simon Bridges, and I'm going to give it to him for two reasons. One, his decision at the end not to contest the leadership. The rumour was that he didn't have the numbers, whatever. We don't know whether that is true or not, but I think he put party ahead of ambition, and I think that has set the National Party up for the future. And also, I think that Simon has an ideology and a worldview, and I think inside National he appears to have the ear of Simon. In fact, I'm very confident he has the ear of Chris Luxon. So I think going forward, Bridges has put himself to be one of the most influential non-prime ministers over the next 4 or 5 years.
Gerry Brownlee, best national MP 2021.
Well, I'll agree with Damien's assessment of Simon Bridges, and I think he's right to say that Simon's positioning around the whole of the leadership does, in fact, tend to support what I've just said, that our 4 years of undetermined sort of where we were going are at an end. But I'd actually give it, because of the fact you've got to look at people over the whole of the year, not just that one very important point, I give it to Chris Bishop, who's been, I think, quite a clever foil, and has pointed out many of the failings, if you like, of the whole COVID response, and has managed to keep Chris Hipkins pretty much on his toes throughout the whole 12 months.
My call for best national MP, of course, Simon Bridges. He got a book out. It's such a lovely book, even during COVID lockdown, and he appeared on the Great Kiwi Bake Off. I mean, really, in terms of success, that's about as good as it gets. Worst National Party MP, Dr Bryce Edwards.
Geez, the worst.
There are so many. There is just choose one, just randomly.
Maureen Pugh sometimes doesn't quite get as much work done in terms of media coverage as she should. Put it that way.
Damien Grant, worst National Party MP.
Well, there's so many to choose from. It's hard to know. Let's just run through these names: Stuart Smith, David Bennett, Simon O'Connor, Ian McKelvey, Tim van der Merven, Nicola Craig, Joseph Mooney, Penny Simon, Simon Watts. I'm a political groupie and I don't know who any of these people are, and there's only about 33 or 34, depending on whether you include the MP for the Bay of Plenty in there. So goodness gracious me, the worst one is very difficult to choose, but I'm going to go for Chris Luxon.
Gerry Brownlee, worst MP.
Look, I'm sitting this one out.
Yeah, of course. I thought you might. I
know all these people. I know these people even better than I know those characters. And I tell you what, the people that you've just listed, Damien, they're all good people. They all work hard. Anybody can go out there and get in the media if you take a contrary position to your colleagues. If you take a controversial position that you know you're never ever going to be able to get anywhere with. And I think discipline is an incredibly important thing in any political party. I'd challenge you to name the last 10 members of the Labor Party caucus. You wouldn't have a show of doing it, and possibly I wouldn't either. So You can't just sort of say, "Oh, that makes them the worst performers." They'll all have support in their own constituency regions.
He's so caring and kind. Good on you, Gerry. Stand up for your team. My worst national MP. Look, and I'm not gonna dwell on it. I'm not gonna dwell on it. But goodness gracious me, when Simeon Brown says some things about it, it makes me. He says some silly things and it fires me up. But bless him, he's doing what he thinks as well. Let's move on to ACT. They've gone from 1% to 17% in a meteoric rise that either marks a fundamental shift on the right or are just National Party emotional tourists living the protest vote wildlife. Matua, Gerry, how does National win back ACT voters without spooking the centre?
Well, I think a lot of the ACT vote last time was from rural communities. That's pretty clear.
Yes.
There was a huge New Zealand first vote in rural communities last time as well.
Yes.
And I know that when we connect with those communities, as we do very, very frequently, there's a lot of disappointment about how well that's unfilled. So I think it's one of those things. I'm not going to say that we're going to get everyone back.
Yes.
But we will get a large number of those people back. Simply because they'll know that there has to be a dominant party in any coalition arrangement, and they'll already be able to see, well, ACT are likely to be part of that.
And you can reach out to that community. Yep. You can reach out to that community without scaring the centre in any way.
Yes, I think so. I mean, look, this so-called divide in New Zealand between the rural and urban communities, I don't think it is anywhere near as deep as it appears to be committed on the keyboards of various political commentators around the countryside.
Agreed. Damien, how high can ACT go? Is the dream run over?
No, I think ACT can go higher than at 17%. I don't know whether they will, though. I think that there's going to be a bit of a bump for National as Luxon gets his feet under the desk, and there is a perception that he is competent. But as we get closer to the election, his centre-left instincts are going to come out, and some of those people who are currently with ACT will flirt with Luxon. Then they realise that the ideology and the wokeness and the diversity stuff that he was pushing at Air New Zealand, he is going to push the same nonsense in National, and I think some of those ACT voters who leave ACT over the next 3 or 4 months will come back by election time.
Dr. Bryce, ACT wants a radical right reformation of government. Do the voters know that?
No, they've travelled into the ACT direction for lots of different reasons. Some of them even voted Labour at the last election, I would say. They have been able to vacuum up people from across the political spectrum.
Yes.
But I do think that, I don't know. They will hang on to most of those voters. They'll lose most, the biggest amount will go to National, obviously. But David Seymour, people have seen him as having a bit of charisma.
Yes.
He's a bit of an anti-politician.
Yes.
And that goes a long way in current times, I think. So even though the policies might be not in sync with a lot of their supporters, they'll keep supporting ACT just because it's the one that is looks like they believe in something. It looks like they're there to do more than just win that centre vote.
A right-wing values party, if you will. Let's move on to the Greens. Floundering while Labour ignores inequality, housing and poverty. The Greens should be in double digits, but it's stuck in single digits. Dr. Bryce, what did the Greens achieve in 2021 for their 2 meaningless ministerial baubles?
Look, they avoided lots of controversies. They kept a low profile. They probably kept their energy up by just not being very busy this year. They knew that COVID was the only game in town. Labour was taking all, as the government, the main party in government, was taking all the, the screen time. So they just kicked back and watched it all happen. If they do that for another year, that will be very worrying. But they've just been so invisible that it's just incredible. If you compare them to the Maori Party, the Greens have just not, apart from Chloe Swarbrick, of course, they have just not been on their game at all.
Matua Brownlee, what did James Shaw actually achieve by going to Glasgow for the climate conference?
Huge amounts of carbon emissions, and contributed to an even larger amount while he was there. Look, I think not much. I mean, in the end, I think the thing that's missing in all of this, and it sort of winds me up a bit, and this is where I think the Greens can or could make a bit of an inroad, is how do each of us individually, day by day, make a difference to carbon emission? You know, you tell me one thing that we can do that's not going to totally disrupt our lives. You know, apart from, say, giving up our cars and constantly using the bus or whatever it might be, or some other form of equally emitting transport. Tell me what it is that we've got to do. There must be some things that we're doing on a daily basis that are contributing to unnecessary carbon emission in the economy. And I think they're not getting it down to that household level. Mind you, nor are we or anyone else. So I think that's an area that they could play in.
Damien, can Chloe Swarbrick save the Greens by becoming leader?
No.
Oh, why not?
I think that I don't think she can. If you ask me in 3 or 4 years' time, I might give you a different answer. But I think we have seen around the world there is a consistent pattern where you take people who are quite young and you push them into leadership roles, and you place them under enormous pressure. They break. You potentially cut short a promising political career. I think it would be a huge mistake. She's still in her mid-20s?
Yeah.
I think it would be a terrible mistake for the Greens to push Swarbrick into leadership. They need just give her some time. She is maturing enormously as a politician. She is more and more confident in her positions. But I think putting the burden of leadership onto somebody that young runs a terrible risk of blowing up the individual and creating enormous instability in the party that she leads.
Let's move on to the Maori Party, who had some of the most eclectic policy positions in 2021. Damien, the Maori Party described the Maori vaccine rollout as, and I quote, modern genocide, and compared it to the Squid Game murdered Disneyland. Hospitalizations and deaths have been incredibly low. Is this a problem for the Maori Party? It seems like a very small genocide.
No, I don't think it is a problem for the Maori Party. The Maori Party, they got some 33,000 party votes last time. They got a couple of seats based on the strength of the individual candidates. I think that there is a small electorate for that sort of thing, and that's what they want, and that's where they're going, and they potentially believe that if they wanted to become a party capturing 70,000, 80,000 votes, then sure, it's a bad policy. But I think the Maori Party likes being the extreme radicals. It's who they are. It is an accurate reflection of what they believe in. So, no, I think it's fine.
Matua Gerry, Thursday last week, the Maori Party, when asked if they could work with Luxon, seemed to open the door to the possibility. Could it be a national act Māori government in 2023?
Well, I tell you what, I think both of them, both Rawiri and Debbie, are underrated and easily underestimated. They both make very sound contributions to all of those hours that the Parliament sits and nobody ever bothers listening to. And I think, Rawiri particularly has a personality that I think a lot of people would find appealing, and I think inside the Maori vote that he's chasing, he's going to do extremely well. Because he's quite strong in his views, and but he's not a guy that's frightening or creates fear. He's much more focused on what he wants to achieve than people might give him credit for. So
I'm hearing a yes. I'm hearing a yes.
Well, you never shut the door, do you? For goodness sake,
that's a beautiful political answer, Gerry. But no, the Maori Party were thrown out of Parliament last time because their electorate rejected the alliance with National. I can't see that a party with John Tamahiri in it is ever going to walk down the aisle.
I'm sure David
National.
Seymour will cut them a wonderful deal. Dr. Bryce, Hona Harawera's tireless protection of Tito Tokoro makes him a strong possible Māori Party candidate. Could the Māori Party pick up more Māori electorates in 2023?
Yeah, I think that's actually a very good idea for the Maori Party, because their problem at the moment is they get lots of attention, much more than their support. Yes, they should, much more media attention. But a lot of the stuff they're putting out is kind of culture war stuff. It's all about racism. It's all about, things that don't necessarily concern flax-root Maori, if you like. And so the Labour Party, the Maori Party, always does best when they're actually hitting hard on issues that concern poor Maori, like things like education, inequality, employment, housing, and that's what Hone Hara is actually quite good at, when he moves away from the culture war stuff and just gets into dealing with those at the bottom of the heap. And the Maori Party will do their best if they also take on that sort of role.
But is that right though? Because that's what they did, I think, quite successfully in government with John Key. But at the end of the day, they seem to get punished somewhat unfairly for that, in my view.
They didn't campaign hard on it, though.
Sorry,
no,
Joe?
They didn't. Well, I'll tell you what, the one criticism I'd have is that the Maori Party did not campaign on their successes in the 2017 election. They sort of tried to look at something that was the future. In the end, you've got to explain to people that it takes time to do things. And they had quite a bit of success, particularly Maori health and education, which are two core areas, and, of course, the Maori economy as well. But they didn't campaign on that. And I think that was one of the things that will have disappointed them in their post-election reflections.
Comrades, we need to move on to the political trauma of 2021 as we wrap the year. COVID and its lockdown caused economic insecurity, anger, violence and fear. And that was just over toilet paper. We haven't seen division between the vaccinated and unvaccinated like this since the Springbok tour. Matua Gerry, the Wellington anti-vax march had more swastikas than I've ever seen at a New Zealand protest. What happened?
Well, I don't know. I didn't pay much attention to it because I think exactly as you suggested, it had become a collection of people well beyond genuine concern about the efficacy or the wisdom of the vaccine. And so it became a collection point for people who've got all sorts of other weird agendas. And I'm not sure what other response you want. It's just it was not, I think, a genuine protest about the issue. How do
you as a political leader, as a politician, and I'm honest about this, Gerry, how do you as a politician look at an electorate out there who are thinking things like COVID is genetically engineered and spread by 5G? I mean, once upon a time you had voters who believed 2 + 2 = 4. When you've got voters who believe 2 + 2 = 20 billion, how do you reach out to them? I mean, how does the establishment bring those people back to some type of reality?
Well, I think time always gets rid of myths, doesn't it? Because the body of knowledge about the direction that's chosen tends to spread much further than the misinformation that's coming out of some of these people at the present time. So, there is no, while science can always be challenged, there is no scientific basis to the criticism that is out there at the present time, other than a whole lot of those connections that, as you say, are sort of 1 and 1 = 3 type arrangement.
Yeah. Dr. Bryce, the radicalisation of political debate is reaching fever pitch. Is it social media hate algorithms, or is it exposing a deeper inequality?
Look, I don't think that there's any simple answer to this. I'm always a bit sceptical of those that just blame the media, blame social media, blame the algorithms for even this term misinformation. I do think we have to be concerned about misinformation, but these sort of things are being weaponized, I think, in political debate. And, what your opponent says is therefore called misinformation, which again is just part of that whole new partisan polarization that we're seeing. I think there's lots of things feeding into it. COVID has obviously disrupted the patterns of political debate and the way that we do politics. And the changes in the media, social media, absolutely are key. But, yeah, like you suggest, inequality, social cohesion going down is playing a big part in dividing us, I think.
Damien, how will this toxic division manifest politically?
I don't think it will. I think you're over-egging it. I think there's always been a fringe element of that. And I disagree with Gerry that saying that over time the myths will even themselves out. I mean, in the year of our Lord 2021, still people believe that Jesus Christ was the Son of God. So I'm not too sure that time cures myths. But the number of people who believe this stuff is small, We see that with over 90% of the population
Right.
are now double
We
vaxxed.
forget this, yep.
And I think that the hardcore people who are not getting vaxxed, some of them are anti-vax, but some of them are making a rational decision for themselves. They're young, they understand that they face very small risks, and they're making a rational decision for them not to get vaccinated. I think that the anti-vax core is probably 2 or 3% of the population.
Comrades, we need to move on to 2022 predictions. Matua Gerry, predictions for 2022, sir.
Well, look, in the way the last couple of years have gone, it's very hard, but COVID is certainly not going away. I think it'll be a long way into 2022 before we see this Mickey Mouse traffic light system give any areas the colour green. And I think we're going to see also an increased number of people getting pretty toey about the vaccine passport system. You know, it just seems to me unbelievable. I comply with it, absolutely, because it makes life easy. But, you know, that's how you start to lose freedoms. And I think it's the fact that this system is taking away lots of freedom, including the right to, make an informed choice about your own health status. And I think we're going to see a lot more of that sort of action. We're going to see the housing crisis intensify. There's all this concern about or suggestion that, we've seen the peak of it, it's all going away. Price might stabilise, but supply certainly won't catch up. And we're going to see, due to various tax changes, the pressure on rental prices rising very much as well. So housing is going to be a big one. And then, you look at the whole issue of security. It's worrying now how many times we're seeing police getting shot at and the police shooting back and taking people out. It's a big problem.
Where do you...
And I think...
go for it, yep.
Well, I'm just saying, so if you're looking in the next 12 months, and I think that issue of the arming of the police is going to come up and be part of something that gets discussed. You can go into almost every one of the social sort of indicators that people look to in this country and see that there's a bit of a mess.
Where do you think the economy will be in 12 months? The suggestion is that Adrian Orr will have raised interest rates 7 times in that period. Is that something that you'll see with inflation?
Well, could be, and that would be another 2 to 2.5% on the current mortgage rate, which is getting back to the sort of thing that we've had in the past. The difference in the past was that the gap between price and income was nowhere near as far as it is at the moment. So that will put a lot of pressure on people, huge pressure.
Damien,
but I don't know that the banks can actually afford to let that happen.
Damien, predictions 2022.
I think you're just talking about inflation.
Yes.
Inflation in the United States last month was 0.8. The month before it was, it was 0.8. Month before it was 0.9. The United States is running at 8 to 9% annualized inflation.
Jesus.
So that's not what they've done the last 12 months, but you got 0.8% in the last month. It's actually down from the month before. But that is a really high rate. I think we've got the next inflation numbers are out at the end of next month.
Yes.
If they continue at the 2 to 2.5% mark in this current period, I think we are looking at a really nasty economic shock, because Adrian Orr, although I believe he is one of the most dangerous and damaging Reserve Bank governors we have had in a generation, I think that even he may feel the need to increase interest rates very, very fast. And I think we are looking at the risk, not a certainty, but the risk of an economic contagion that will make the stagflation of the 70s look like a Mad Hatter's Christmas party.
You're saying that Adrian Orr will use the bazooka, he'll come out and he will jump that interest rate higher than 0.25?
Actually, I think it's beyond his control. I think
it's that bad.
If inflation starts to run at 9-10%, because don't forget that in the last quarter, inflation was at 2.2% for 90 days.
Yes.
That is nearly 9% on an annualised basis. Jeez. The next inflation numbers are out at the end of January. If the rate of inflation does not come down at the end of next month, you are looking at an annualised inflation rate of 8 to 9%. And at that level, it does not matter what Adrian Orr does.
He can't get ahead of it.
The banks themselves are going to start charging higher mortgage rates. Adrian Orr could very well lose control of the situation. And in that situation, he won't be able to keep interest rates low. Interest rates are going to spiral out of control. And at that point, you've got people currently with mortgage rates sitting at around 2.5% to 3.5%, going from that to 7, 8, 9, 10%. I'm not saying it was going to happen, but I think that we are vastly underestimating the risk that happens, and the economic fallout from that are going to be so bad and so desperate that people may actually, in desperation and fear, turn to Chris Luxon.
Dr. Bryce Edwards, predictions for 2022.
Well, housing inequality, the health reforms should have been the big issues this year.
Yes.
Really, they were displaced by COVID, by Delta coming along. But I think they're probably going to be big next year in 2022. Housing, as everyone has discussed in this program, really hasn't been fixed, and it's just going to get worse. But the other big one is going to be water. And the 3 waters for reforms, really, I think the government's going to have to reconsider those, and I won't be surprised if they just pull the plug on that one, so to speak. But if they do push ahead, they're going to have a huge amount of opposition.
Hold on.
And it's going to be it could be quite a bitter, nasty debate.
Okay, Bryce, do you believe, talking about inequality, do you actually think people change their vote on the basis of it, or is this just a talking point that people see?
Yeah, I think, for example, in 2017, when Labor had the resurgence of support, part of that was Jacinda Ardern, but a big part was that Labor was hitting hard the government on inequality, housing crisis, and it started resonating with people. So, yeah, I think
did it though? If Jacinda Ardern gave Labor a 6-7% bump, well, after she was so. There was no significant change in the message, simply the delivery between Andrew Little and Jacinda Ardern. Andrew Little was hitting the equality buttons and all the rest of it, and people were simply not interested. I struggle to think that people actually vote on inequality. They might vote on if you're poor, maybe they will affect your vote. But do people really? They say they care about inequality, but I think that's a Beltway talking point, not something for the voting public.
It's hard to judge, isn't it? But certainly the public do say it's important. They give every indication that issues like housing, like inequality, poverty.
Yeah, because of course they do. I mean, it's like saying, how long is the piece of string? And people will tell you how long they think the piece of string should be.
Thank you, comrades. To my final word for 2021 and prediction for 2022. When you think about it, a bat-winning bird of the year sums up 2021 perfectly, in that you were expecting one thing and then received something completely different. And if you dared question what you ended up getting, you would judge the worst human being ever. We thought we were getting the year of the vaccine this year. What we got were claims of Nazi Germany, demands to open the border followed by demands to then shut the border, 4 months of de facto house arrest, and Liz Gunn accusing Jacinda of, and I quote, raping Gaia. 2021 is the year none of us got what we wanted, and we dared not challenge what we did get. I predict Hector's dolphin for Bird of the Year 2022. That was The Working Group, New Zealand's greatest weekly political podcast that isn't funded by New Zealand on air. Our thanks for the year to Simon Bridges, David Seymour, Matthew Hooton, Matt McCartan, Dr. Bryce Edwards, Gerry Brownlee, Damien Grant, and our sponsor Gravity, Debt Management, and MediaWorks. This will be uploaded on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Rover, and YouTube, and I'm going to open the envelope now at the end of the show to see if we're coming back for 2022, because people have been asking. We've got a drum roll, and the answer is maybe. Let's see what Sean Plunkett's going to offer.
We'll have to talk to our excellent sponsors at Gravity Credit Management, because they have been fantastic. And hats off to Gravity Credit Management, a fantastic organisation run by outstanding individuals who are there to collect the hardest debts in the nicest possible way.
Hey, Bomber.
Yo, Gerry.
Can you give me their address? Because I've got a podcast needing a sponsor as well.
Well, I've got.
If you're uncertain about your future or not.
We'll do what we can, Gerry. We'll do what we can.
That was New Zealand's greatest weekly political podcast, The Working Group. Not 1 minute of this show was funded by New Zealand On Air. Nope, no creamy public broadcasting money for us. That was The Working Group.